What's up, sisters? This is your boy, Beef Supreme, and welcome back to the channel for another modded companion build guide for Baldur's Gate 3. I hope y'all are having a fantastic day, because today we have the final companion to build out, and his name is Minsk of Rashaman. And of course, his miniature giant space hamster, Boo. Before we get into it, thank you so much for watching. If you like these kind of build guides, let me know by liking the video and subscribing for more content like this, and let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. But without further ado, let's get right into the build, and oh boy, do we have a fun one. For this build, we're going to be kitting out Minsk as a Path of the Giant Barbarian. This is a class straight out of D&D 5th edition, but is a relatively new addition to the rules. It was first introduced in Big B Presents Glory of the Giants, right around the time Baldur's Gate 3 released, so it flew a bit under the radar for people like myself, who became obsessed with Baldur's Gate 3 at that time. The subclass is also planned for release to Baldur's Gate 3 in the upcoming patch 8, but for now it's only available through mods. For the sake of this build, we're going to pretend that Boo, as a miniature giant space hamster, taught Minsk how to harness the might of the giants to vastly strengthen his combat abilities. Minsk is, after all, the only one who understands Boo, so for all we know, they could be discussing the finer points of existence and the meaning of the universe. The logic is airtight here. Since we don't get Minsk until halfway through Act 3, you can obviously use this build on a Tav, but just because I want to, I'm keeping Minsk and Boo around. Because, I mean, look at that cute little tiny hamster. Who doesn't want to keep Boo around? One of the core features of this subclass is Giant's Havoc, which gives us two really cool bonuses. First, we add our rage damage equal to our proficiency bonus to our thrown weapon attacks. Second, your reach increases by 5 feet and your character becomes large. That's right, this subclass's rage ability turns you into a literal hulking giant with a 10-foot melee range. Toss in a reach weapon and now your range is 15 feet. Wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. This subclass eventually learns an ability which allows you to imbue your weapon of choice with any elemental damage, converting all of the weapon's physical, piercing, slashing, or bludgeoning damage into pure elemental energy, plus an additional 1d6 of that damage type. The weapon that you imbue with elemental damage also becomes a returning weapon, so you can throw it over and over and over. Because we can add our rage damage to our elemental throwing weapons, we have the benefit of being able to abuse the wet status effect for double damage, which we're totally not gonna do. As such, even though we can't throw 3 times per turn like the Berserker can, we can ultimately outpace all other throwing builds in the game for pure raw damage. But now, let's get into the leveling of this character. Level 1, we're starting with the Barbarian class, obviously. We'll choose our subclass at level 3, so there isn't much to worry about here. For our ability scores, we want to focus on Constitution and Strength. Strength is our attack modifier, so we want this to be as high as possible, and Constitution helps us to tank more damage while raging. Ultimately, this is going to be one of the few builds where I do advocate for strength potions and tavern brawler feat, because they really take these throwing builds to the extremes, and not using them puts you at a huge disadvantage compared to the Throw Zerker and the Eldritch Knight thrower builds. For that reason, I'm going to be dumping our strength stat at an 8 so that we can put our points elsewhere. If you're starting the game with this character, I would definitely start with a typical Barbarian stat spread of 16 Strength, 16 Constitution, and 14 Dexterity. The rest you can choose however you want to. But because I plan to use potions, we're going to put 17 points into Constitution, planning for the +1 from Tavern Brawler. We also want a 16 in Dexterity, because as an unarmored character, this will give us a bit of a boost to our armor class and initiative. We'll be putting our remaining points in Wisdom for the mental saving throws, and we're going to dump Intelligence and Charisma because Boo does all the speaking for us. At level 2, we get our Reckless Attack and Danger Sense, both of which are standard for Barbarians. Reckless Attack enables us to gain advantage on attack rolls until the end of our turn, which is really nice, but it also gives enemies advantage on attacks against us. Ideally, we'll be raging, so having advantage on us isn't a terrible problem. While Danger Sense gives us advantage on Dexterity saving throws against traps, spells, and surfaces, so that's really cool because we're going to be right up in the front line most of the time, so having advantage on Dexterity saving throws is excellent. That's all we really get at level 2, so let's move on to level 3. At level 3, we choose our subclass, and we are going to go straight for the Path of the Giant. When we choose this subclass, we get Giant's Power. You add half of your proficiency bonus, rounded down, to your Deception, Intimidation, and Persuasion skill checks you make against giants. Baldur's Gate 3 has no giants in it, so we can more or less ignore this buff. This is a remnant from Tabletop where you learn the giant language in case you're running around in the Big B Presents campaign with giants everywhere. We do, however, get our special rage ability, Giant's Havoc. This ability gives us the power to grow large when we rage, increase our range by 5 feet, and get a bonus to thrown weapon damage. With the Giant's Power ability, we also get to choose a cantrip, but Thaumaturgy is our only option, so let's just go with Thaumaturgy. At level 4, as a Barbarian, we don't get much, but we do get a new feat. When you're this early in the game, throwing isn't the powerhouse of damage that it will become later, because we don't have our elemental damage added to it yet. So you could go with a Great Weapon Master for additional melee damage with your increased range. Once we reach level 6, though, we will gain access to our elemental throwing damage, so once you hit that level, I highly recommend respecking to trade out for the Tavern Brawler feat. The Tavern Brawler feat is probably one of the most powerful feats in the game. When you make an unarmed attack, use an improvised weapon, or throw something, your strength modifier is added twice to the damage and attack rolls. So theoretically, if you have a strength, ours is 8, but at this point, we're going to start taking our strength potions so that we can get our strength to a 21 and eventually to a 27. At a strength of 21, you'll be getting your strength modifier is a +5, so adding that twice to the damage and attack rolls gives you a +10 to damage and attack rolls for your throwing weapons, which is really insanely powerful. Once you get access to the Cloud Giant elixirs, you can get your score to a 27 for the day that you drink it, and at that point, you'll be getting a +8 twice to your damage and attack rolls, which is really insane and super powerful. We also get a +1 to either strength or constitution because we have dumped our strength for the strength potions, and this +1 does not affect the potions. We're going to put it into constitution for an 18. At level 5, we get access to our extra attack, really awesome, and our movement speed increases by 3 meters while not wearing heavy armor. We're only going to be unarmored, so this is perfect. We get an extra 3 meters of movement range. At level 6, we finally unlock our Elemental Cleaver. When you enter your rage, you can choose one weapon that you are holding and infuse it with elemental energy. While raging and holding the infused weapon, you can use a bonus action to change the weapon's infusion. At this point, throwing becomes our primary strategy and one that is incredibly powerful, and at this point, I am going to legally obligate you, if you're playing this character, to throw everything that is not nailed down. At level 7, we get Feral Instinct. You have honed your instincts to the utmost degree. You gain a +3 bonus to initiative and can't be surprised. This is kind of like the Alert feat light. So because of that, we don't have to take the Alert feat if you don't want to. We can just get some other initiative boosting items or abilities, and boom, we have basically the Alert feat as just a part of our class. Freaking sweet! At level 8, we pick a new feat. And if you wanted to, you could take the Elemental Adept Lightning to go around any enemy's lightning resistance. What I'm actually going to do is take the Sentinel feat. Since we have a melee range of 15 feet with a reach weapon, our area of control on the battlefield is absolutely huge, so it opens up a lot of room for these defensive attacks. The Sentinel feat, when an enemy within melee range attacks an ally, you can use a reaction to make a weapon attack against that enemy. Target ally must not have the Sentinel feat. You gain advantage on an opportunity attacks, and when you hit a creature with an opportunity attack, it can no longer move the rest of its turn. So because we have a 15-foot radius for our melee range, we have a huge area of control that we can, if one of our allies is near us and gets hit, we can do this, and it's really powerful because we just have total battlefield control over this. Although we are throwing the majority of the time, there's obviously going to be some times that enemies are near us, and sometimes our allies are near us, because sometimes we can't always be in range, so we sometimes are going to be in melee range. At level 9, we get access to Brutal Critical. You train to strike swift and true. When you land a critical hit, you roll an extra damage die, as well as the normal additional critical dice. This just means that if we get a critical hit, it's going to do a ton of more damage, which is really cool, because why not? We get lots of more damage. And at level 10, we get probably the single most fun ability of the subclass, Mighty Impel. This feature allows us to move one medium or smaller creature to any empty space within 9 meters. Basically, we can now just throw average size NPCs. Whether you want to pick someone up and throw them into a chasm, into some lava, or wherever, you can throw your enemies wherever the hell you want to at this point, as long as they are medium or smaller. Medium encompasses average characters like humans and elves and pretty much anyone who's not larger than you are. So this ability is tons of fun and just adds to all the chaos that we're going to be causing on the battlefield. At levels 11 and 12, the Barbarian doesn't get very much, so instead we're going to multi-class and take 2 levels of Fighter. The main reason that we want levels of Fighter is so we can get Action Surge, just so we can do more damage, and also because we get a fighting style. For our fighting style, you can grab whatever you want. I don't recommend taking defense because we're not wearing armor. We are unarmored, so we're not going to get that +1 to our armor class. Great weapon fighting will help boost our melee damage. If you have any fighting style mods installed, you could take a thrown weapon fighting style. I have 2 options here. I have thrown weapons. You gain a +2 bonus to thrown weapon attacks, or thrown weapon fighting when you hit with a ranged attack using a thrown weapon, add your proficiency bonus to the damage. I'm going to take this one because my proficiency bonus is 3, so we're going to get a bonus to it. But if you don't have one of these mods installed, I definitely recommend taking Great Weapon Fighting to boost your melee damage. And finally, at level 12, we take our second level of Fighter so that we can get Action Surge. This allows us to immediately gain an extra action to use this turn, so we can just do out more damage, which is really invaluable. But that pretty much does it for the leveling of this character. Barbarians are overall pretty simple to level, but now let's look at the gear and equipment that makes this build even more powerful. So because we are primarily a thrown weapon build, we want to focus our equipment on items that boost our thrown weapon damage. For one, we have the Marksmanship Hat. You gain a +1 bonus to range attack rolls and thrown attack rolls. This will just give us more accuracy with our thrown weapon. We're also going to use the Ring of Flinging, which you can find very early in the game. The wearer gains a 1d4 bonus to throw damage. This will just give us more throw damage. We can also use the Gloves of Uninhibited Kushigo. The wearer deals an additional 1d4 damage with throw attacks and attacks made with improvised weapons, so you can get a 2d4 bonus with the ring and these gloves combined. If you want to, there's a really interesting pair of gloves that you can grab in Act 3 from the circus called the Dark Displacement Gloves, which has Subtle Swap. You gain a +1 bonus to attack rolls when throwing, and may swap positions with the target if they fail a dexterity saving throw. So we will be sacrificing an additional 1d4 damage in exchange for a +1 to our attack rolls. But the really cool part about this is that you may swap positions with the target if they fail a dexterity saving throw. This is a really cool pair of gloves because it means that every time that we throw our weapon at someone, which we're doing a lot, they will have to take a dexterity saving throw or possibly just fully switch places with us. This means that we are now right in the middle of all of the enemies and can use our massive 15-foot melee range to attack whoever we want or keep throwing at whoever we want. And the enemy that we previously threw at is now in the middle of our allies and is surrounded by us. What this does mean is that you can effectively just throw your weapon anywhere you want around the battlefield and just teleport basically wherever you want for free. So these are really cool gloves, and I'm going to put them on so I can show you what they look like in combat because we don't need as much damage yet. For our armor, we're going to be using the Enraging Heart Garb. While raging, the wearer generates 2 turns of Wrath. Wrath is a really cool ability that gives us a +1 bonus to damage with melee weapons for every turn this condition has remaining. So if we are in melee range and we're raging, then we can just go ahead and do more damage with it because why not? Additionally, this armor gives us a Constitution boost +2 up to 20. So this is why we didn't take our Constitution past 18 because now we have Constitution of 20. Really powerful and really great. We have a ton of health. We have 147 total. So this character is very tanky, and when we're raging, we'll take half damage from physical, so we can tank a lot of hits. Additionally, we're going to use the Cloak of Displacement. At the beginning of the wearer's turn, the cloak activates, granting enemies disadvantage on attack rolls that target the wearer. This effect lasts until the wearer takes damage. So this one is just going to increase our tankiness and make it so that we have more of a chance of not getting hit, even though we have an AC of 20, which is very high. For our boots, we're going to be using the Water Sparkers. When the wearer stands in water during combat, it becomes electrified. If the wearer starts their turn on an electrified surface, they gain 3 lightning charges. So we are going to be using primarily lightning damage for our Elemental Cleaver, because one of the things that we are going to abuse is the ability to throw water at our enemies, which will do extra damage when we throw it at them, and then they will be wet, and because they're wet, they will take extra damage from our fully electrified damage from our weapon. In combination with that, we're going to use the Sparks Wall. The wearer can't be electrocuted, grants resistance to lightning damage, so that then when we end up eventually standing in our electrified puddles after we throw our electrified weapon at our wet enemies, we will not be electrocuted and we won't have to worry about the effects of that, and we will also just not have damage from the lightning damage, or we will have less damage from the lightning damage. For your weapons, you have a ton of options at your disposal. Because the elemental cleaver works the way it does, you can throw literally any weapon that you want to. You can throw halberds, you can throw long swords, you can throw glaives, you can throw anything that was previously not throwable. Right here, I have the lightning jabber equipped. On a hit, possibly shock your target, and it gives you extra throwing lightning damage when launched at the target, deal an additional 1d4 lightning damage, and it has a +1 to its weapon enchantment. Although this one isn't the most powerful, it does include extra lightning damage and possibly shocks your targets, so it kind of plays into that whole lightning thing and helps to just fully thematically tie the lightning part of this build together. If you don't already have a character using the Trident of the Waves, you could actually just take this and on a hit create a 2-meter water surface centered around the target. This would fully negate your need to throw water bottles, because then you could throw this trident, throw it a second time, and now your enemy is already wet and they'll take that extra lightning or cold damage if you wanted to. The Sparky Points is a great choice here because the wearer will, when the wielder deals damage using this weapon, they gain 2 lightning charges, so we'll be able to gather up more lightning charges. The main thing with lightning charges that I'm not a huge fan of is that they just don't do a ton of extra damage. You get a +1 to your attack rolls and deal an additional 1 lightning damage. And then when you get to 5, you do 1d8 lightning damage on an attack. But that's okay. It's not like, it's more powerful in the early game, and I definitely recommend using this early in the game when you're in Act 1. But once you get to the lightning jabber and a lot of these other weapons, you can fully just kind of outpace it. You could even throw Baldur's Giant Slayer if you really wanted to. You could throw the Sword of Chaos. You could throw the Halberd of Vigilance. I definitely recommend going with a reach weapon here, because reach weapons will give you the additional 15-foot range. However, a 10-foot range is still pretty powerful for any of the normal range weapons, so I'm going to stick with the Lightning Jabber. If you really wanted to, you could use Nerolna. This weapon will return to your hand when thrown. You cannot be forced to drop the trident. When thrown, the weapon creates an explosion that deals 3d4 thunder damage in a 6-meter blast centered on the target. So this one will combine lightning with thunder damage and does probably, and will also create that AoE that does more thunder damage in the area. However, the thunder damage does not benefit from the wet effect, so it's really up to you whether you want to use Nerolna or the Lightning Jabber or the Trident of the Waves, or even the Breaching Pikestaff, which does an additional 1d4 force damage on thrown. You could also use the Unseen Menace. This weapon is invisible while equipped. It loses this property for 2 rounds on a missed attack roll. Having that bonus is really nice, and because it has extra reach, you can do melee with this from 15 feet away, so this is a very powerful melee weapon, and also thrown weapon. But literally any of these weapons you probably couldn't go wrong with. You could even throw the Drake Throat Glaive, but we have a different use for this that is going to make our Lightning Jabber even more powerful. Then what I highly recommend doing is to take your weapon of choice. I'm going to use the Lightning Jabber here and place it on the ground. I love this weapon because it is a giant freaking pincer crab leg. It's really great. I love it. And it really just kind of matches with Minsk's silly vibe here. So we're going to use Draconic Elemental Weapon and apply the lightning version onto this weapon. And now we can pick it back up, and when we re-equip our Lightning Jabber, it has an additional 1d4 lightning damage in addition on top of what it already had, and another +1 to weapon enchantment. So that's ultimately going to change our damage to a 1d6 plus 10 plus 1d4 lightning plus an additional 1d4 lightning when we throw it. So even though this weapon is not normally super powerful, it is going to be brought into Stratosphere when we abuse the wet effect here. We're also going to wear a shield, the real Sparky Sparkswall, with a +2 armor class and the Lightning Aura ability. Lightning Aura allows us to consume 3 of the lightning charges that we've generated and release a blast of electricity that damages and jolts nearby enemies. So we're not going to use that ability very often, but we wanted a thematic shield, and the real Sparky Sparkswall is pretty thematic. This will ultimately bring our armor class up to a 20, with a +3 from Dexterity, a +5 from Constitution on account of the unarmored defense we get as a Barbarian, and a +2 from our shield. For our amulet, ultimately there isn't really very many options that benefit Barbarians in many ways, so you could go with the Periapt of Wound Closure, which will just give you a little bit more tankiness and will make you easier to heal. Or you could go with the Silver Pendant, which just gives you guidance. There's nothing really that is super applicable, so we can just go with whatever we want here. Alternatively, you could use the Amulet of Greater Health when you get to Raphael's house in Act 3, but I don't want to include that in this build because this is something that you really just don't get until pretty much the very end of the game. There's nothing else that you really need for your amulet slot, so whatever you want to take there is fine. So, like I mentioned earlier, this character is going to be one of the few that I definitely recommend using the potions of Cloud and Hill Giant Strength. In the early parts of the game, you'll use the Hill Giant Strength elixirs so that you can get your strength up to 21, but eventually you will get the elixirs of Cloud Giant Strength, which will increase your strength to 27. This gives us a +8 as a strength modifier, which will be added twice to our thrown weapon attacks, giving us an overall +16 to the attack roll and the damage roll. It basically gives us Great Weapon Master plus, but with no penalty, which is really insane. But that pretty much takes care of all the equipment options for this character, so let's go pop into some combat and see what this character can do. Let's go, Boo. Let's go, Boo. Come with me. So, because we're going to be abusing the wet status effect, you definitely want to carry around some water bottles with you. I am here at the alchemy store in Worms Crossing, just because I don't have any on me, but I'm going to purchase one so that I can demonstrate what we do with them. Go, Boo, go! So the first thing that we want to do when we enter combat is grab our Giant's Havoc and enter our Rage. When you click on this, you can choose to either go into a basic Rage, which is silly to do at this level, or you can choose your elemental damage type. You can choose Acid damage, Cold damage, Fire damage, Lightning damage, or Thunder damage, and this changes the full damage output of your weapon into that elemental type. So we are going to go with the Lightning version, and as we do this, we grow larger, increase our melee range, and now we have a extra 1d6 of elemental damage. We do 16 to 32, 1d6 plus 10 plus 1d4 plus 1d4 plus 1d6 plus 2. We're doing crazy damage with this, and that doesn't even include the Tavern Brawler boost. So now what we're going to do is run over here, and let's get some throwing started. We're going to click the Throw Infused Weapon and choose our weapon of choice, the Lightning Jabber, and now we can throw it at anyone we want. With the Subtle Swap gloves on, we just switched places with them. It was a critical miss, but they still failed the pass, so so we switched places with them. Let's throw our weapon back at them. Oh wait, I totally forgot to throw a water bottle. Let's throw our water bottle here. Let's throw so we used our action surge on this turn, but now we're going to throw a water bottle at this guy just because I forgot to do that. Let's throw it, let's see if we can get both of them wet. We'll throw a water bottle at these two characters. And now both of them are wet for 3 turns, and they have vulnerability to lightning and cold damage. So you could use cold damage for this, but I'm going to stick with lightning because I like the way it interacts with the lightning jabber specifically. And now let's throw it at this guy. And we did 44 and 4 damage. Absolutely insane. Let's go ahead and end our turn. Now, Boo isn't really that super useful in combat. I mean, he does his own thing, but it's okay. One of the really cool things about Boo is that if you place him next to Minsk, you can pick up Boo and throw him at your enemies. And when you throw Boo at your enemies, he will go for the eyes, Boo, and possibly blind your enemies, which is really hilarious. The unfortunate thing about throwing Boo is that because we have the Tavern Brawler damage and the Ring of Flinging, normally Boo is immune to thrown damage, so you can throw him basically however much you want, but because we have these 2 items on, he is going to take damage, so we don't really want to throw him that much. If you don't have those items on, then you can throw him all you want, freely, without taking any damage, but otherwise, you don't get much benefit out of it, except he possibly dies. So this character here is wet. We're going to run away from them for a second, and then we're just going to show you some more damage we can do with that. Let's do... That's an insane hit, 46, 8, and 6 damage. That was a one-shot kill on that character. Let's do another one. This guy, he's not wet, so we're going to do less damage, but still really great damage. We also switched places with him. And what that means we're going to do is take a speed potion so we can get another action. And we're going to come over here, and we're going to pick this guy up. And then we're going to throw him. Then we're going to throw him over here. Let's Mighty Impel. Woohoo! Not a ton of damage, but way too much fun. And now, because he is laying down and prone, we're going to throw another thing at him. Boom, 3 and 26. End our turn. Oh, Boo is gone. That's okay. Boo! And now it's our turn again. Let's throw our weapon at some people. Let's take this guy out. Critical hit. 7, 33, 16, and 8. That guy wasn't even wet. He didn't need that much damage, but that's okay. We're going to go ahead and throw our weapon at this guy, even though he's right here. 26, 2, 8, and 9. He is mega dead. And now we can do the same thing up here with this guy on the top. Boing. 21 for 8 and 7. Absolutely insane damage. Let's do that again. And he's dead. And that's combat for us. We just wiped out 5 guys all at once. No problem. We only lost 30 health and... yeah. As you can see, this build is absolutely insane. I'm going to summon Boo back. If you have the benefit of other characters in your party who can set up the wet effect for you, you don't have to throw the bottle. If you don't have to worry about setting up the wet effect on your own, then you can throw with each of your attacks and do even more damage. So this is really just insanely powerful for a throwing build and doing pretty much whatever you want as a giant miniature Minsk hamster. But that pretty much does it for this Path of the Giant Barbarian build for Minsk of Rashomon. What do you think of this build? How do you think it ranks up against the standard Throw Zerker and Eldritch Knight Thrower builds? Obviously, we don't get access to the improved attack or the bonus action weapon attack that the Throw Zerker gets, but because we can abuse the wet status effect, I think this build has a really high power ceiling that can ultimately, if not at least meet the Throw Zerker and Eldritch Knight Thrower builds, possibly pass it, depending on how you decide to use it in combat. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see y'all in the next one.